welcome to day one of QuakeCon 2023 and the Quake World Championship. I'm DJ Wheat, joined here today by Flea and Ketchup, and we are about to kick off day one of the Quake World Championship with our group stage where 12 players will be battling it out to secure their spot in the round of 16. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to day one. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, to say the least. I think players arrived nice and early this week. They've had a decent amount of practice, and they're, I think, as ready to go as they could be. Obviously, the land setting will change things out considerably. And in terms of general vibes, I think there's a mixture of happy to see everyone again, but there's definitely an intensity because there's a lot on the line this weekend.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I've been talking to a bunch of the players backstage, and every single one that I've talked to was like, yeah, I've been sleeping well, setup feels good, performance is great, you know, this is gonna be it.
Well, I mean, the big question is, will we see a new champion crowned this weekend here at QuakeCon 2023? I'm not going to get too far ahead of ourselves because we've got quite a bit to go through, including today, the day one schedule. You can see it right now, where we're going to have the main stream and the B stream going live on /Quake and /Quake 2, where you're going to see all of the matches from the group stages. We'll look at those groups in just a second, but just to give you an idea on what you can expect here for day number one. And all of these players have qualified in or were ranked during the regular season and now have to kind of battle it in order to secure that spot in the round of 16. We'll take a look at the groups here in just a moment. I mean, gentlemen, we can reflect back a little bit on like the 18 weeks of regular play that we had during the QPL Season 4. We saw a lot happen. We saw players kind of break out of the mold and really kind of run to the top. We had guys like Strong Sage finishing top 8 in his first time in this season.
Something that you don't see all that often, the newcomer.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can talk about Strong Sage loads and loads and loads later, but it's just lovely to see a journey like that. However, quite a few of these players in these groups have a journey of their own. As you can see here, Group A, Dramis, Buxter, and Celts. Group B, Chain, CNZ, and Dander King. Group C, with a combined age of, I think, roughly the 120 mark, Toxic, Garpy, and
boys.
Sparty. That's what Quake's all about. Group D, Cygib, Sib, and Effortless. So, I mean, look, everyone's got their own attachment to various players here. A lot of you at home are probably looking at some groups in particular. And look, we're spending all day getting through them.
And of course, just to remind everyone, it is the top 2 players of each group that will advance into the final stage that starts tomorrow.
Yeah, so unfortunate that we will see basically 4 individuals, 4 competitors have their tournament run end here today, but making it into that round of 16, already tough. And then tomorrow we're going to go on another journey, and then of course day 3 will be our finals day as well. So here's the upper bracket, right? So we're a day away from this, but it's kind of fun to play the what if game, gentlemen. What if, right, Wenger and Strong Sage go up in the round of 8? What if we see Rasva and Nosva or Kilson and Maxer? Like, all of the round of 8 are going to be explosive, but there's some great players in the group that could come in and potentially cause some disruption in the round of 16.
And don't forget, folks, double elimination.
Right.
The upper bracket being the first destination for those that start tomorrow's games. But if they lose one of those best of 3s, do not worry, because there is a lower bracket where those players will then join, right? So, long story short, 2 lives in tournament, and that's your lot.
Yeah, except kind
today.
of today. Kind of. I mean, you know, you got to get to play Swiss format, I guess, throughout the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, today and then tomorrow, obviously that's when the round of 16 starts. Day 3 is going to be our finals day, where we're going to be wrapping everything up. The games today during group stage will be a best of 3, not like a regulation where all 3 games are played, but you win 2, you get your win in the win column. And so just to set expectations on what you've got today. So, what do we want to look at? We ready to just talk about what the first game is going to be, or
look, from our last broadcast to now, been a bit of a wait. I think everyone just wants to talk about these matches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and before we kind of jump officially into that, one of the storylines that has been pretty prevalent in every single week that we've got is that, you know, we have got the top 8 all very capable of causing some wild chaos within the tournament this weekend. We all kind of entered into QuakeCon thinking, you know, it is possible that we have 6 to 8 different possible champions, right? That could happen. Wenger at the top of the list, right? And currently kind of coming off and defending a championship. Rafa, Razy, Kilson, Zeniku, Maxter, and Strong Stage, just that top 7, and then Nosfa in there as well. Like, that is a stacked group, and every single one of them have shown incredible performance here throughout Season 4.
Yeah, absolutely. These are clearly the best players in the world that we've got with us for the Quake World Championships. And like you said, this is impossible to call, right?
Yeah.
We've got plenty of these players in the top who have already secured their first victory, but then you've also got the likes of Razy, who is stranded in the 2nd place so damn often. So maybe this is the one for him.
If there's one tournament to have it, it's going to be a tournament like this. You know, to break that. I almost don't want to call it a curse because it's so high up in the bracket.
It's a little bit of a curse.
At this level, first place is all that matters to them.
Yeah.
And Razy's definitely the kind of player that will play out of his mind, and if he can't get that #1 spot, he's not going to be satisfied. And that is the champion mentality. That is the mentality that basically everyone at this tournament is going to have. And then factoring in the LAN setting, the fact that things are going to be so heavily focused, nothing really getting in between yourself, the player, and just the game that you're playing. The return of QuakeCon in person, like the vibes are good. Everyone's happy. You can see around in the convention center, in the lines getting in, everyone is just so over the moon that we are finally back under the same roof. And we get to celebrate the world's greatest Quake gameplay with the world's greatest Quake players. And with today's show, I mean, we're just going to get right through it. Don't forget as well, there is a B stream as well as this. So have 2 tabs, if not 2 monitors. There's a lot of Quake to consume today.
There will. And today might be a little bit shorter than our other days, but focused here on the group stage and then round of 16. It is going to heat up. So set your calendars, your reminders, whatever, over the course of the next 3 days. It's going to be pretty fantastic. So let's go ahead and talk about the first match that we're going to be seeing here on the A stream, and that is going to be Buxter versus KELTZ. And I'm not sure exactly what group that is because I'm too small. Group A. That's for Group A. Buxter versus KELTZ. Flea, any thoughts?
I mean, Buxter is a player who has made it into, like, in the same spot that he is now time and time again. I believe this is the 4th time that he's qualified through Challengers, only to always strand and to never quite make it into the Pro League itself. So Buxter, representing Latvia, is looking good. Had the opportunity to talk to him earlier. He's feeling good. He said he's got some practice in, better than he's ever played. So let's hope that he can really put up a show for us today.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for Buxter to try and just hit that layer in tournament that perhaps he's not reached before. And I think that's a really big deal about these kind of events. You know, I was talking to him merely an hour ago before we entered here, and the important thing for him is that he's been able to, excuse me, get a lot of rest. He's been able to sort of like fix the jet lag. He's awake and he's ready and he's, you know, prepared for these matches. And believe it or not, sometimes in a tournament like this, that's all you can ask for before you've even played your first match. There are so many external elements that can keep you from being laser focused that if you can conquer those beforehand, you're off to a good start to just ascend from that point.
And his opponent, KELTZ. Flea, any thoughts here?
I mean, KELTZ is definitely one of the more interesting players to keep an eye out because this is his first Quake Champions LAN. He is the only player of the 20 that we have with us that is actually really making his debut in the Quake Pro League. He managed to qualify through the 4th global qualifier, if I remember correctly, representing Sweden. Same with Talks, same with Sardi. We've got quite a few of them. And this is his first LAN. This is the first time playing with the big boys on the big stage.
And I feel like that opportunity is being relished and, you know, for a lack of a better term, rinsed for as much as it can. Because it could be just me and it could just be a coincidence, but every time I've looked over at the player areas and some players are practicing, some players are hanging out, I feel like he has just been sat down almost the entire time. Every time I'm over there, he's playing practice matches against someone, right? And if it is your first LAN, you got to get used to those small differences that the LAN will provide. And many players, and this is not just Quake, this is most esports in general, that a first appearance can be one of 2 things. Either you just hit the ground running and take everyone by surprise, or you can crumble under that pressure. The elements at play that are so different to playing at home can really get in the way of your focus.
Right.
And for his case, you know, I'm sure it won't, but let's hope that we can get off to a good start and just play some good Quake.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk a little bit about just the Swede connection, right? Like the Swedes have had a legacy here. We've got Toxic, right? One of the greatest. There's Fox, there's Faz, and KELTZ putting himself up there to potentially be, right, another one to carry that Swedish Quake mantle and trophy flag ready into battle. So I think we got a chance to sit down with KELTZ and learn a little bit about. Excuse me, with Buxter. We'll hear from KELTZ eventually. With Buxter, hear a little bit about how he's approached this tournament. Let's check it out.
My nickname in-game is Buxter, and I'm not a part of any organization. My nickname comes from a very long time, from the 90s when I was a little boy, from the internet club. So yeah, I invented my nickname there. I think my favorite champion would be Galena, and it's favorite since the release of the game. Like before the time limit duels, like in duel round format, it was my favorite champion. So I think it's still my favorite champion. I'm not playing her that much, but yeah, still favorite. My favorite weapon probably is rocket launcher, but I wish it was LG, because a lot of players out-LGing me in the game by quite a lot. This is my first QuakeCon in United States. I was at QuakeCon last year in Romania, and I might have played some online qualifiers for QuakeCon, not sure, but in US that's the first year. I'm excited to play my group stages first of all, because I already know who I play against, so yeah, I'm looking forward to those games. I think it's really hard question to who is gonna take the trophy. I want to believe that KELTZ might take it, but I also saw Wenger's improvement, but also we have Rafa. So I say one of these three players will take the trophy. Well, shoutouts to my friends and family who will probably be watching my games and cheering for me. So yeah, shouting to them.
First QuakeCon here in the U.S., always exciting and certainly a big moment for any Quake player, especially to be playing on that stage. Love that Buxter is pretty hyper-focused on the group stage, right? You should be. You kind of know who your opponents are. You can't really be thinking too far ahead because you got to get through that first set of mini-bosses before you're actually going into the round of 16.
Yeah, true. I mean, and I think that's perfect, the right mindset to approach this, right? You've got to focus on day one first, because it's far from guaranteed that you're even going to see day two, right? The level of competition is so insanely high that even in the group stages, no matter who you are, no matter which group you're in, there's a very real chance that you won't be able to progress into day two. So for Buxter to really say, I'm putting all of my focus on this, I know my opponents, I've studied this, I've prepared, I think that's just the right way to go about it.
And I feel like experience and time has taught us that that is often the approach that players on day one have always taken, whether it was the old days of the relegation or you know, those individual matches, whatever the case may be. You kind of look at players and you've talked to them, and that first day has always been pretty much the most important day to them, because the bracket is the bracket, and that's something that we can talk about tomorrow. Today, as we said, only 2 players per group make it out, which leaves room for players to be out now. You know, within merely a few hours, we could be saying goodbye to some of these players that have spent all year grinding and getting ready for this tournament, which is a mixture of heartbreaking, but also you're really proud of the players that make it through and the emotions run high. And it's just wild to think that we've only just started the show, but it won't be long until some players are eliminated.
Yep, welcome to esports. That's how it works, right? And not everyone can be a winner. You don't all get a participation trophy at all, unless you're just watching, and then we're, you know, congratulations, we're here. So let's take a look at the picks and bans here for our first matchup, Buxter versus KELTZ, as that will certainly play into it. Who wants to break these down?
Whoa, all right. Well, it may be the first match of the day, but we're getting a high-octane one. It's going to be Athena versus the Slash, with the other crouch slider removed from play thanks to Buxter. Corrupted Keep. It's going to be BJ versus the Ranger, and the Anarchy being removed. And our final destination, should we reach it, Vale of Nath. Galena says, I don't play Galena that much these days, but here it is. And it's going to be the Ison. Now, a very common pick system for Vale. You do see a lot of Galena, you do see a lot of Ison, and the Death Knight being taken out. I have seen in the Final weeks, as things have developed, we've seen a little bit more Death Knight on some maps, just for either the denial, the explosive nature of how much damage he can do. And on a map like Vale, you know, you spring one good trap and Death Knight can take a frag. That frag could be, for all reasons, the end of the game. So maybe we'll be seeing a little bit more of that later on. But Flea, anything here really stick out to you in particular?
I mean, I'm loving map 1 immediately, right? Blood Covenant is really the playground for those nimble, fast champions. So Athena versus Slash is going to be really hype. Gonna see some really fast, high-octane gameplay. Map 2, Corrupted Keep, very standard picks, right? The BJ is so popular on this map, and Ranger just has so much versatility with that orb, both defensively as well as aggressively. And then, as Ryan pointed out, Vale, actually two pretty similar champions in a way, right? They're both mediums, they both have got nothing special in terms of movement, and they've got like a deployable item, the totem versus the turret. And indeed, Ryan, like you pointed out, we've come a long way from, you know, Death Knight being that final pick in the final map of a best of 7.
I think that's Keel this year, sorry for you, but Keel's probably going to be that this year.
I think it is.
I think map 2 is kind of interesting too, right? In the interview, Buxter talked about, hey, I love the rocket launcher. I wish I loved the LG a little bit more. Well, right, a lot of BJ players on Corrupted Keep are looking for that perfect high accuracy LG to really make the best use of the dual wield, but we've seen, right, other cases where a heavy machine gun comes into play too. So I'm just curious, based off of his interview, right, and saying, I'm not maybe as confident in my LG as I would like to be, but that's a very standard matchup, but one of the areas where it's like that kind of makes or breaks some of those games versus the Ranger on Keep. So pretty excited about this first one.
I would say as well, for the people at home, get used to seeing Ranger. I've spoken to a few players this weekend, and on this LAN setting, some players have really said they think that Ranger is one of the strongest in the pool. So, you know, I know he was already a strong champion anyway, but hearing his name brought up more than once in just one day, I feel like that's going to give us more than enough information that you're probably going to see him a lot this weekend.
Yeah. Same goes for Anarchy, I think. Unless he's banned, which we can expect to see happen a whole lot. I think Anarchy and Athena have been the two most banned champions by a pretty significant margin for the entirety of this season.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see if that changes or how that might, just how LAN play might affect that, right? And I think you mentioned it, Ketchup, but that first matchup, high octane, great way to kick off QuakeCon here on day number 1. I'm looking forward to this one.
I hope they've had their coffee. It's early here in Texas.
It is.
It's a little early. I mean, they've been over there getting ready and prepping for a solid hour now. So practice is in, players are getting ready, and it's just exciting to hear kicking off another in-person QuakeCon and Quake World Championship.
It's a great time. It's a great time, and it's been a long time coming being back in this environment. And you know, I know we've mentioned that KELTZ, this is the first LAN, but for everyone else, they've at least been to a LAN before. Some of these players, this will be their first QuakeCon. So the morning is still extremely early here in Dallas. So you know, the event itself is going to set up the BYOC, the lights are going to go on, the games are going to start, the crowd's going to start making noise, and it's all a part of the show that I just cannot wait for. You know, the spirit of the LAN is really merely a few hours away.
It is. So we're probably just moments away from this first game. Quick reminder, today's the group stages. If you just joined us, today's group stages. All these matches are going to be best of 3. Win 2, you get the W in the win column. Tomorrow will be our round of 16, and we'll start to make that through, even play out some of the lower bracket. We will see some great competitors probably leave tomorrow too. And then, of course, day 3, that's the finals day. Someone's going to grab that belt. Are we going to have a new champion? Will it be a previous champion? I have a feeling we're going to see one of the most explosive final days that we've seen in quite some time. And get used to us saying that, because we're all expecting it, to be a little wild. So I don't know if we're ready to hop into game 1 quite yet, but we're loading in right now, I guess.
Yes.
So all right.
Now, well, before we get it started, just perhaps a bit of a look back at the history between those players.
Yeah.
They've I got to do it.
You got to do it.
I got to do it.
I was waiting for that.
Ketchup was waiting for it. These two players have only faced each other once in the context of the Quake Pro League, and it was Buxter securing the victory in a 2-1 fashion. But it was a very close series.
All right.
When was that? Do you remember?
I think it was the one of the global qualifiers, the 3rd one. That Buxter qualified ultimately.
That's
one of the qualifiers. Okay.
Yes, it was one of the qualifiers for challengers.
All right, gentlemen. Well, enjoy yourselves. I'm a step away, but take it away. I'm excited here for game number 1.
Well, as we've already talked about, thank you very much, Wheat, and we'll be seeing you in a little bit. The speed and ferocity is what you expect here, and the fight towards Heavy has already begun, and KELTZ in a pretty bad situation, but as long as these rockets miss, which that final one does not, there was an avenue that perhaps Buxter was not going to secure that first frag. However, he was, and the armor being able to pick up right there afterwards, and now we look towards that next item. In this case, it will be the Heavy again. And KELTZ spawns near the Mega, takes it for what it is, and has had at least enough time now, Flea, to get the important weapons locked in.
Absolutely. Now, this was quite the unconventional opening. Just a brawl at Heavy, with KELTZ balancing on the edge of the map. Buxter did manage to secure the first frag. Kind of waiting things out.
Wow.
KELTZ speeding on by.
Yeah, there was no chance in hell that Buxter was going to be able to challenge that Heavy, so quite rightly did the right thing. Thought, well, I can't compete for this item. What I can do is keep my positioning. I've got the top of the map. That's going to give me a lot of information to chase and look for those rails, of which Buxter has plenty of in the tank. Lacks an LG right now, and that could be a pain. That's one trade-off, I suppose, of this high ground, is that the LG definitely is hiding beneath. Uh-oh, that missed rail's an absolute go-ahead for KELTZ to push forward, and the rail back-to-back, that's going to be 2, looking for the final kill shot, but unable to obtain it. Now, what it has done is trade positioning. KELTZ was able to now control the high ground instead, and it has been Buxter relegated to a worse position. There's the benefit of Athena, though, using that grapple. No self-damage of a rocket jump necessary. I'm going to go up there, I'm going to meet you, and I'm going to try and fight for this high ground. Our next objective, Flea, is going to be that Heavy.
I like how Buxter has been playing this so far. He's just kind of counter-punching towards KELTZ offensive, right? He knows that Slash is so fast, he doesn't have an LG yet, so the way he's approaching this is by waiting, kind of trying to use the speed against his opponent, just letting them come into the room and then resort to those rockets. Big damage coming out, both players low.
Oh!
No kill shot just yet. KELTZ will be the one to secure health and armor first. Buxter kind of has to make a run for it, but he's dangerously low. He can't stick around for Heavy.
No, absolutely not. He's going to have to go for the slightly less attractive light armor, and I'm sure Buxter was able to hear that plasma trail coming around the corner, knowing that this Slash is going to be here in the moment's notice, and you have to fight and you have to try and survive. A nice little combo as well, a couple of rockets able to hit the rail near the end, but surviving it, your life was still very much in the balance. An aggressive push again from KELTZ, but this one masterfully answered back by Buxter. KELTZ got absolutely nothing out of that plasma trail, and has actually, in a reverse of fortune, been put in the same situation. It was now relegated down to the catacombs, tries to concede actually that light armor, and it will be Buxter in a much better position to take this Heavy. KELTZ has been kind of in and out, right? Almost a hit and run style, but the moment Buxter's ready for it, where does KELTZ go from there, Flea?
KELTZ is taking a whole lot of risks, in my opinion. That push up the bounce pad, he absolutely could have died there. Buxter, he mentioned it himself, his LG isn't always up to par, and if he had landed a few more shots, KELTZ could have really been in trouble and been down 2 frags by now. Now rails are being exchanged. KELTZ is gonna get the upper hand. Buxter has to relocate, still not confident in sticking around for Heavy. First has to go secure that small armor. Once again, rocket, that's really been Buxter's main tool. Here we go, KELTZ pushing through the choke point, eating a direct. It's gonna have to fall back on the Heavy.
But it is this aggression that I do wonder if we're gonna be seeing this throughout the rest of the series, Flea, because KELTZ, seeing the opportunity to know I've got a Heavy behind me, I can dish damage and then equalize even further by picking up this Heavy, decides to push through a very, very risky door and needs 100 damage for it. A couple of those, putting yourself 1 or 2 frags down against Athena, yeah, you're Slash, but Athena has totally different ways to navigate this map. And if Buxter's able to then take that lead and play a slower, more patient game, it's still going to be tricky for KELTZ to come back. I'm a bit worried about some of these pushes.
I am too. I'm expecting one of them to go wrong sooner rather than later. Buxter has really just turtled down, right? Of course, he's still moving around the map. He's now securing some of the major items too. But you can tell that he's not hunting for frags. He is just waiting, always trying to approach each fight defensively, either with his rocket out, trying to force KELTZ through a choke point, or by going for the rail engagements.
Now, a difference here is that KELTZ has been able to get a substantial amount of stack. However, just that 1 rail, make that 2, is not only going to be bad for KELTZ, but here here comes Buxter with a major push, looking for the final shot, or at least a shot that would put KELTZ in a much, much worse position. That two-piece combo, though, gives him exactly what he wants, and it looks like Buxter is on the hunt, but cannot chase it down enough. That is the nature of Slash. She is so fast, so able to get in and out. There's that rail, and now KELTZ is in big trouble. An aggressive push was made, backing off KELTZ, trying to take the light health, as it was really the only thing that he could have picked up nearby and not taken a bunch of damage. That will now be 2 frags to 0. The halfway point is met, Flea, and Buxter really in control of this match.
He absolutely is. He absolutely is. That's the way he likes to play it as well. Again, going for a rail engagement. KELTZ landing the opening shot, unreturned damage. That should allow him to walk away with the Mega clean and free. Now Buxter, still looking for an angle. I don't think he's going to be changing up his game plan. This is what's working for him. He's always going to try and stick back, allow KELTZ to come to him, hopefully land the first rail, otherwise just retaliate with the rockets, and that's how he's going to want to play this game out. Now, again, KELTZ, I think that's 2 rails landed, unreturned in a row. Finally, Buxter trades with him though, but this might be an opportunity for KELTZ.
I like the patience from Buxter there. I think some players might have panicked in that instance and used like their last grapple to go underground just in case you get chased. But Buxter has the timing of the items. He knew the heavy was just about to spawn, and he knew that KELTZ was going to do the smart thing and use that damage to get a free heavy. The small little bits of optimization, right? Just having, let's not be, you know, let's face the facts that Athena doesn't have as many grapples as she once did. So you have to manage them so much more carefully, especially against someone like Slash that she'll chase. If she wants to chase you, she's going to chase you.
Oh yeah.
So Buxter has got to be careful, and careful he certainly has been. This Mega is going to be the next objective. Misses the opening rail, which is kind of unfortunate because, yeah, he's now got to give it up.
Big damage.
Good opportunity for KELTZ, though, who will make this aggressive push. The LG's been pretty good, but not enough to finish the job just yet. And actually, KELTZ still on the aggression, knowing that this Mega is going to be a free pickup and just wants to secure the frag first. Sadly, though, has been unable to do that, which is going to give just a small margin of breathing space for Buxter. However, has to concede that heavy. We're going to go back to that slow game, looking for maybe a rocket around a corner, a rail at distance. What I'm worried about is if KELTZ lands that first rail and Buxter doesn't return.
I like the restraint we're seeing out of KELTZ. He absolutely was tempted to make a big push earlier, held back and just fell back on the item, knowing that he still got time.
But again, the thing is, as you say that, KELTZ decides to go in for another push and walks right into a rocket and then walks right into a rail. All of that work that KELTZ has built up over the last few minutes was undone swiftly. Now, sadly, time is running out.
We're now kind of getting into the point where KELTZ is going to have to commit to those aggressive pushes over and over and over again and go take more and more risks. And we've already seen that turn out poorly for him earlier, and I think the time pressure is only going to make that worse for him. So Buxter, again, this is kind of like his favorite spot on the map, over at the railgun site.
I like the choice. You've got lots of information, you've got lots of backups, you know, loads of escape routes, especially with Athena. Even instances where you drop down, you're normally a lot more at risk of taking damage because of the slow drop speed. Athena, verticality is not something she has to worry about thanks to the grapple hooks. But 2 minutes on the clock, as you quite rightly said, I imagine KELTZ is going to start to go, right, I'm running out of time and I need to do something. So these aggressive pushes are going to continue. Rocket jump turns into a free rail. Buxter with just the patience. And the patience has been the magic word for the last 8.5 minutes. Again, the punish there on that jump pad. You want to use it? Well, I hope you're ready to trade off 90 damage for your efforts, because I'm still in the lead and you are running out of time, mate. I like that defense piece at least.
It really is. It's great. This is a masterclass. That's a lot of damage. A rail comes out. KELTZ, again, not in the position to make a push, and this is not where you want to be. If you have to chase down your opponent, you at least want to be the one who's in control of the major items, right? But the fact that Buxter is still controlling both of them, he's actually even going to go in, take this fight. If he can secure this kill, which he does, good rocket. I think that one might just seal the deal. Ketchup, I think. I mean, technically, yes, there is still time, but KELTZ, very little stack to work with. No weapons either, no rail, no LG.
That was the problem. Pushes himself out fresh off the spawn, but the only weapons you're going to be able to find is rocket launcher, heavy machine gun, and that's not going to be enough at that range to do anything to Buxter, who can return with rails and whatever else he fancies. But I think you're quite right there, Flea. I do reckon this is probably going to be the end of that first map. That third frag really sealed it and now KELTZ is going to push forward and kind of do what you can, but mathematically, I just don't think it's going to happen. Just came down to really, really good defensive play from Buxter, and kind of even in the closing 15 seconds there, that was the story of almost every single engagement. I'm going to wait for you. You're going to, at some point, come speeding around this corner with an aggressive push. I'm going to get first damage. You're in a bad situation.
KELTZ is going to be regretting how that very first engagement over the heavy turned out, because that's really what gave Buxter that 1 point of an advantage that he ultimately ran with, forcing KELTZ to come to him, and then he closed it out in a very convincing fashion. Now the scoreline is pretty low, but overall I think it's clear that Buxter was the one who was in full control. He dictated the pace of the game, and he made the decisions that really mattered, whereas KELTZ was constantly just playing catch-up.
And from the very beginning of the map, we saw stuff like that, and I kind of liked that approach from Buxter, though. You know, we're talking about, we looked at the map, we looked at the champions, and we think expect a really high-octane game, and although the movement was still there, and it was the nature of being able to just get in and out, that was all still present. Because it was such a low-scoring game, it was down to just making every frag count.
Yeah.
And those frags, it can't be a good feeling when you're 3 down, and all 3 of those frags were initiated by you. You know, Buxter was playing just reactively this entire map. He was doing what he needed to do. He was keeping the timing. He was playing the way he knows he has to play, but he was just spending the whole map listening to and then just reacting to these situations. I feel like KELTZ might come down here. I can hear the approach. Right, it's time to play. I'm going to hit this rocket, I'm going to hit this rail. And even if it didn't result in a frag, it took away enough stack that KELTZ could no longer stick around.
Yep.
And that's the problem, because now you've got to disengage, you've got to get your stack back up, you've put yourself out of control now, you cannot contest these items. And looking at these endgame stats, even the stats by the end, I think Buxter was just... Even look at the damage of the rocket.
Yeah,
you know, over 1,000 from the rocket on its own. Significantly more on the railgun too. And that was the result of almost every fight, was rocket and rail in some combination.
Yeah. I think it was really KELTZ who was trying to push for those LG fights. But if you look at the damage, right, 231 versus 294, that LG barely saw any use this game. It was dominated by rails and then those defensive rockets by Buxter. So, exactly. The score is borne out by the statistics as well. Now, just gonna say, if anyone doesn't have the Quake 2, the B stream open, make sure that you do, because they're running matches at the exact same time, and I can hear 40 and ZSX getting loud just over there. So that must be a pretty hype game as well.
Look, if you've got 2 monitors, make use of them. If not, just have 2 tabs.
Perfect.
Easy, and you don't want to miss anything. But we just to quickly reflect on those final stats before we go into our next map, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be that corrupted keep. It's if you are a player that gets out LG'd all the time, it's just part of the adaptation process, isn't it? If you look at the fact that there's more use of rail and rocket, but almost no LG, and when you look back at those fights, there was no opportunity to LG. That feels extremely deliberate to me. You know, Buxter with the understanding of, I don't really want to take these LG fights, so my game is going to be built around being at a distance that my preferred weapons are better. You know, I'm going to be really far away and hit those rails. I'm going to set up those weird angles, maybe try and play reactively, as we saw on the first map, to hit those initial rockets. And they just mess up those good LG situations. If it's too close or it's too far, that's not where you want to be. But it just works so well for him. I'm not going to have the same luxury, sadly, on our second map, but maybe that's why the BJ got picked. So A, my opponent can't, and B, having 2 LGs might kind of make up for my lack of consistency with it.
Also, Buxter went ahead and he banned Strog. That was his very first ban, which very clearly was not a ban for Blood Covenant, but he was thinking ahead, and he was thinking about this one, Corrupted Keep. He did not want to deal with the Strog, the crowd sliding, the Peeker, and indeed, yeah, the BJ is a pretty good pick. If you're not confident in your LG, that extra damage boost from the dual wield can really help you out in those tricky situations.
Now, I think as we have clearly seen in those picks and bans, though, it's going to be the Ranger from KELTZ, and that's a pick that is just so consistent among Quake players because, as we said, again, just to remind, on the off chance that some of you have just joined us, we've been talking to a lot of these players, and I have heard more than once that on LAN, Ranger is considered to be pretty good. So I imagine that we'll be seeing him even more than online, if you would believe it. But let's jump into our first opportunity here as Buxter with that BJ spawns. As far as BJ goes, kind of spawns in one of the best places he could. 2 LGs already locked and loaded, which means you're also able to deny the LG from your opponent.
It's remarkable how both of these games have started with the players being aggressive like this. You know, it's always started with an immediate fight, not something you see in every series. Now, Buxter, still missing rockets. Doesn't have the super shoddy either. Those are important weapons on this map. Now keep in mind, Corrupted Keep, the only map that doesn't have a railgun in it. Buxter made very good use of that weapon on map 1. Now he's got to play without it, so that may come useful for KELTZ.
KELTZ confidently using that stack to say, you know what, I'm going in. I'm taking this weapon, you're not going to stop me, and now it's time to fight back. And we have a more even playing field here. However, Buxter still has to be careful because he hasn't quite been able to get a few extra weapons. He's missing a tri-bolt, he's missing a shotgun. And on this map, those 2 weapons are pretty damn important. How Buxter has spent the majority of this map just taking control of that LG room. Oh, hang on a minute. KELTZ kind of bullying his way through there. You know, we eye up what's the next objective going to be. Pretty even split, if I do say. So I think both these players are going to have to make a choice. Looks like a choice might be forced at this rate as Buxter drops down to take that light armor. However, you don't want to let your opponent take both of these major items. The dual wield was used just to scare off KELTZ and force him away. In doing so, KELTZ is going to be able to take that free, heavy, uncontested Buxter an opportunity to get more of that rocket ammo and try and figure out what do we do next. Buxter has just been a pain in the backside for KELTZ, and it kind of get real vibes of that first map, even here,
I was about to say.
waiting around the corner.
Buxter's really just taking the same strategy and pushing it through on map 2 as well. So often that he's setting these little traps. You know, just like right now, he's waiting. He knows more or less exactly where KELTZ is at, and he wants to bait him into making the mistake. He's waiting for that dual wheel to be back up again.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a nice steal from KELTZ. Perfect use of that orb ability to secure himself both of the major items. He's going to drop down, pick up the heavy, and now he's going to plus forward. He wants to secure this, but that was a meaty defensive rocket from Buxter as we've come to expect.
We've seen that all over this series as those rockets placed so well. The damage that just undoes all that hard work. You know, shoutouts to KELTZ. That cheeky little ranger maneuver is something that I love to see, even years and years later, being able to pick up 2 items at once. The dual wield is able to get a pretty decent amount of damage. You are getting floated. The chase down with the orb, though, but it's not quite enough to kill. Again, Buxter lives, and again, Buxter escapes, not only with his life, but with the heavy. And the delay between those 2 items continues. It's a great chance for Buxter to now bring himself back into this. KELTZ had such an advantage, but couldn't finish the job.
That was a squandered opportunity by KELTZ. When he was over towards the small green armor and he looped around through rockets and dropped down, he just ended up giving the best position on the map up to Buxter, allowing him to easily drop ground onto Mega, force him out of the room, and then make a run for heavy. So KELTZ, he had all the advantages. He had 100 stack over his opponent, and still he put himself in a weaker position and allowed Buxter to not only survive but thrive. Just look at that. Buxter now in control of both of the major items once more.
Must be said, I do not think that KELTZ is having as much of a good job with his rockets as Buxter. We saw KELTZ there was springing a trap very similar to what Buxter would do in Nailgun Room. He heard Buxter coming, but he just didn't have the mental timing for that rocket to really do anything. You know, that could have been 100 damage, that could have been 80, it could have been anything other than the basically 0. And now Buxter able to run around this map, pick up what he needs to do, take that first frag, reward himself with a heavy. 15 seconds until Mega, so now we can start the snowball fleet. We can start to cycle these items. We can keep the opponent behind and struggling. And it looks like the way things are going, this could be a 2-0 for Buxter. You know, KELTZ has got to shift gear into something else because this hasn't worked for 15 minutes.
He's gonna need another one of those big plays, like when he used the orb to secure both of the majors and steal him away from Buxter. He's gonna need another one of those, but that's difficult to set up and even more difficult to execute. There comes the orb. Just a fakie.
Oh, wait, no, that's a big push for Buxter. He hasn't got to worry about the orb anymore. Why does he care about going up close?
Buxter could have done more there, though. Plasma was not hitting at all. He might actually go down and die here. Yeah, Buxter has to make a run for it. Again, if he had just continued the assault when he jumped into the room and KELTZ was swapping away from the plasma gun, Buxter had him dead to rights. Got a little bit of a fumble there of him, I believe.
Oh, but the rockets again flee. Every time KELTZ feels like it's the time to go in, a rocket is lying in wait. Now, we're not calling this like it's over. There is a chance, a strong chance that KELTZ can bring this back and then maybe even take this map. But with the way things are currently going, right, aggressive LG, and that's going to result in a frag for KELTZ. Wonderful job. It wasn't super clean, but in the Mega Room and having access to all that extra health, it doesn't really matter too much.
Buxter was expecting him to make a move for LG. That's why he had heavy machine gun out, looking to do some damage to the back.
Come on! 3 rockets from that! Buxter's rockets have been sublime this morning.
They really have been. See KELTZ reeling after that death.
Yeah, because it's what it could potentially mean.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You don't want to start off first thing in the morning going a map down, 3 people in the group, only 2 people can make it. I mean, that can't be a good feeling! Oh. Neither can that! Oh my god, right in the kneecap. Ouch.
Buxter's LG is looking, let's be real, shaky, unconvincing, right? Let's put it nicely. But his rockets more than make up for that lack of confidence with the lightning gun, and KELTZ is just unable to exploit that weakness. The rockets are just too good. And now 10 seconds between the major items. Buxter stacked as hell. KELTZ, he's got to find some way to deal with this. He cannot go for a full frontal assault once again. He needs to whittle down that stack. Go for the long distance heavy machine gun. Maybe catch him off guard. Go for another big ore play, but he's just not able to pull it off. This should be another kill. Yep, Buxter.
And this is going to be the benefit to that BJ pick. I know that it's more than just LG that benefits BJ on this map. The health regeneration can be really good. Having 2 machine guns, having 2 rockets, having 2 shotguns, it all works out. But if you don't have the LG that everyone else has, just being able to give yourself that extra damage from it by having the dual-wield LG, even in that instance down there when you chased it down, it can go a long way. Plus, you know, the benefit if your opponent cannot pick that champion either. But 3 minutes on the clock, mounted of work for KELTZ to pull off in this first map, and Buxter looking relatively unchallenged this entire series. I feel like we could definitely be looking at a 2-0 here. Buxter has just had a strong game plan from the get-go.
Yep.
You know, there was a clear idea the moment things began, and it's worked perfectly. His positioning has been wonderful. KELTZ has just been eating these rockets, eating these rails on map 1, and even here, I mean, I blink and KELTZ is gone. Trapped off the spawn, all you've got is a nail gun. Could easily be another one, and dare I safely, I think that's a wrap.
I'm inclined to agree, Ketchup. I also think that the ability usage has just been so much better on Buxter's end, at least so much more effective used when it really mattered, right? What has Buxter gotten out of, well, one, that passive health regeneration? We've seen it come into play multiple times, but he's also been able to use the dual wield to either get a frag, to push his opponent away, just to have that intimidation factor. But what about KELTZ? He had that one brilliant play where he stole both of the items, but other than that, what has the orb really done for him? He's either used it to absolutely no effect whatsoever, kind of wasted it, squandered it, allowed Buxter to close the gap, or he just kind of threw it out as a fakie that barely accomplished anything. So the ability, the orb, has really not worked for KELTZ.
I think he's going to get beaten to that heavy at death's door at this rate, and that's the super shotgun. I breeze in your general direction, and that's going to be another frag. And looking like, folks, a minute and a half to get 5 frags for the Buxter, who has been in control and in charge for the entire series. I do not think that it's going to result any other way. 2-0 for Buxter is going to be the final result of this map. It's a shame, really, that KELTZ couldn't get going. It just seemed like Buxter had that strict game plan of he knew how he was going to position himself, kind of knew how he was going to approach this map. Even here, you know, from that range, at that position, somehow hit almost 40 damage of a rocket. KELTZ has just been bullied this entire time, but he's not been chased. That's the bizarre thing, is that when someone bullies someone, you think they're the ones that's being aggressive. They're people that are pushing forward and not letting you do anything. Buxter has done that, but he's more sort of waited for KELTZ to make the first move. I imagine it's frustrating.
It has to be. It absolutely has to be. Now, this does mean that Buxter, again, beats KELTZ, secures himself 1 win, and that is so critical because all of these players are only playing 2 matches throughout the group stage. Buxter now facing down at KELTZ, and yeah, 1 more win and he guarantees himself a spot tomorrow.
And needs to keep that focus at the same time.
Yep.
GGs, of course, will be rolling out any minute, and that will be Buxter taking the first series of the day and the first series of the World Championship this weekend. So congratulations there. By all means, the job is not done, and Buxter is going to know that better than anyone, but you know, a big part of this competitive environment is confidence and motivation. And if you're able to have a really strong result and a strong showing right at the start of the day, you're gonna naturally feel good going into the rest of your matches.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race. We hear this a lot, and that's how I felt like I would classify Buxter's play. You know, game one, although pretty low scoring, somewhat meticulous, but I think it was just sort of like, as you said, working on a game plan, executed it, it worked out. Game two is really interesting because dual wield was almost like I've got a big giant bat and I'm going to hit you with it, but not actually doing, right? I think there was one kill where he trapped him into the corner there right outside the red room. But outside of that, what it did yield was control for Buxter. And it just seemed like KELTZ was unable to really, you know, grab some control. That also is really unfortunate right off of that frag. KELTZ felt like he had some momentum, and then 3 rockets just stop you dead in your tracks. But you know, as you mentioned, Buxter wins that first match. He will then be playing Dramus later on too, and I'm really going to be looking for like what the pace of that game looks like compared to this one, because although Buxter did play slow and steady to win the race, I think Dramus is going to come in and just start sprinting, right? And it will be it'll be interesting to see how Buxter handles that.
It's more the fact that KELTZ was the kind of player that was kind of making that first step, and certainly on map 1 was the initiator to many of those fights.
Sure.
But Buxter was merely the finisher. What I'm thinking is, when Dramus comes into play, Dramus do be one of the fastest players in the league.
Absolutely.
He is.
So
yes.
is Buxter's style going to work against aggression of that caliber?
Right.
I think remains to be seen. But to be honest, I'm excited and I'm here for it. I want to see what happens.
And frankly, winning that first game and going into that, there's still a pretty good chance for Buxter to make it out of those groups, right? We're going to have to see what happens in the other 2 matches, but good place, I think, for Buxter to be.
Yeah. Now, as far as KELTZ go, right, we can't count him out just yet.
No.
Okay? Like, I hope for him that this was his very first showing at a LAN ever. Right? So maybe he's now worked through the nerves, gotten rid of those jitters, right? He's able to calm down, just look at what he needs to do to still maybe advance into day 2. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. But, yeah, mistakes were made during these first 2 maps already. But I do think that he's got more in the tank, and that hopefully for him he can reset and now bring it into his next match.
It's concerning because normally at an event like this, I'm kind of known to say, if these mistakes happen or the mishaps take place, if it happens at the very beginning, at least you can get it out of the way.
Sure.
This weekend, there is no room for that.
There's not.
And that is where things get a little bit concerning, because normally you can get a few mistakes, happens early on, you've kind of just, you know, you shake it off and you run into the next match, the rest of the tournament, and you're better. Here, you've got 2 matches. For day 1, 2 matches can decide whether you make it or you're out.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
And then
if
you do make it, then you get to go fight in the alligator pit that is the round of 16, right? Where it's like everyone is a predator and they're all coming after you. So that's going to wrap up match number 1 here on the A stream. We're going to be back. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, our second match of the day. Don't go away. We'll be right back.